Hello and welcome to the second lecture of CompTIA Security Plus 601 exam. Rootkits. Rootkits are stealthy and malicious softwares designed to gain unauthorized access to a computer system while concealing their presence and activities. They are particularly dangerous because they can embed themselves onto the OS, allowing them to execute malicious actions, steal sensitive information, and evade detection by security softwares. They can be prevented by using anti-malwares that detect rootkits, enabling secure boot with UEFI, and using a rootkit remover. Adware, also known as advertisement supported software, is a software that displays unwanted advertisements on a user's device. These ads can appear in various forms, including pop-up windows, banners, or embedded within web pages and applications. Adware often comes bundled with free software or download it from untrusted sources, and users may inadvertently install it without realizing its presence. While adware itself may not be inherently malicious, it can degrade the user experience, slow down the system performance, and compromise privacy by tracking browsing habits and collecting personal information for targeted advertisement purposes. Spyware. As the name suggests, it is a software designed to secretly collect data and monitor and collect information about a user's activities on their device. It can capture keystrokes, track browsing habits, record passwords, log chat conversations, and even take screenshots without the user's knowledge or consent. Spyware is often installed on a device through various means such as phishing emails, malicious attachments, software downloads from untrusted sources. Once installed, spyware operates silently in the background, transmitting the stolen information to remote servers controlled by cybercriminals. Spyware possesses significant privacy and security risk to users, as it can lead to identity theft, financial fraud, and unauthorized access to sensitive data. To protect against spyware infections, users should exercise caution while downloading software from the internet, avoid clicking on suspicious links and attachments, and regularly update their device with the latest security patches. Additionally, using reputable antivirus and anti-malware software can help detect and remove spyware infections. Users should also be mindful of their online activities and employ best practices for cybersecurity, such as using strong passwords, enabling two-factor or multi-factor authentication, and practice safe browsing habits to minimize the risk of spyware attacks. Bots and botnets. Bots, derived from the word robots, are malicious softwares that automate scripts behind the scenes and control the system, often without the user's knowledge. They can lead to attacks such as spreading spam. Bots can scrape contact information and use it to send unsolicited emails or messages. DDoS attacks or distributed denial of service attacks can be used by botnets. More on them later. Stealing data. Bots can be used to breach security measures and steal sensitive information. Influence social media. Some bots mimic human behavior on social media platforms to manipulate opinions or trends. A botnet is a network of private computers infected with bots and controlled remotely by a cybercriminal commonly known as bot herder. Bots can be prevented by traffic analysis, monitoring for unusual traffic spikes or patterns that may indicate bot activity, authentication measures, implementing CAPTCHAs and 2FA authentication to prevent automated access, regular updates, keeping softwares and system updated to patch vulnerabilities that bots could exploit. Security software, using antivirus and anti-malware solutions to detect and remove malicious bots. Logic bomb. A logic bomb is a type of malware or code that is intentionally inserted into a software system that goes off when a predefined event occurs. Logic bombs pose a significant threat because they can cause extensive damage when activated, and their activation can be timed to coincide with other significant events to maximize impact. They are difficult to recognize since there are no predefined signatures for a logic bomb and are often associated with insider threats as they can be planted by someone with authorized access to the system. Here is how you can protect yourselves against logic bombs. Use a reputable antivirus program. Using a robust antivirus program and keeping it updated can help you prevent your device from viruses and malicious codes that may carry logic bombs. Monitoring. Install and use softwares that can alert you when changes happen in the system or a tripwire that alerts you when an event occurs. Audit. Make sure that audits are regularly changed according to the current needs and followed. Password attacks. It is a kind of attack where the attacker tries to gain access to a system by cracking or guessing passwords of the user. Most passwords nowadays are stored as hash values instead of plain text, which cannot be decrypted from hash values. Here are some of the ways attackers try to get attack the password. Password spraying. This is a type of brute force attack where an attacker tries to use a single password against multiple usernames. Unlike traditional brute force attacks that target one account at a time, password spraying aims to avoid triggering account lockout mechanisms by spreading the attempts across many accounts. Brute force attacks. These attacks involve systematically checking all possible passwords until the correct one is found. It's a trial and error method that can be time consuming and is less effective against strong and complex passwords. Dictionary attacks. Similar to brute force attacks, dictionary attacks use a list of common words and phrases to guess passwords. It's more efficient than brute force attacks because it uses a pre-arranged list of potential passwords that are more likely to be used by people. Rainbow tables. These are pre-computed tables used for reversing cryptographic hash functions, primarily for cracking password hashes. Rainbow tables can be effective against unsorted hashes, which is why sorting is an important countermeasure. To prevent such attacks, it is advised to use stronger passwords or use a password manager, implementing multiple factor authentication and adding salt to the passwords, as said before. It is some extra characters to change the hash value. It may not prevent the attack, but it can definitely slow it down. Physical attacks. Physical attacks refer to the direct manipulation or damage of hardware devices or the theft of data through physical means, such as malicious USB attack. This involves using a USB device like a thumb drive to introduce malware into a system or to damage a computer by delivering an electrical charge. Examples include the rubber ducky and bad USB attacks, where the USB device is programmed to act as a different type of device, such as a keyboard, to execute malicious commands. Malicious flash drive. Similar to USB attacks, malicious flash drives contain harmful software that can steal data, install backdoors for remote access, or even physically damage the device they are connected to. Skimming. Skimming is a strategy used by cybercriminals to capture and steal cardholders' personal payment information. It can occur via physical devices attached to the ATMs or POS systems, or through digital means such as e-skimming, where attackers infect e-commerce sites to collect card information in real time. This can also help attackers to clone cards for use in public places. Adversarial artificial intelligence. AI can be found everywhere nowadays, from voice assistants to spam filters to self driving cars. Adversarial AI refers to techniques used to manipulate or deceive AI systems. Some of the examples are as follows: poisoning the training data. This involves intentionally inserting misleading or incorrect data into a training dataset. The goal is to compromise the integrity of the AI model, causing it to make incorrect predictions or decisions. Attackers might bias the data to influence the model's behavior, potentially embedding backdoors or exacerbating biases. Evasion attacks. These occur when an attacker inputs carefully crafted data into an AI system, causing it to make a mistake. These attacks are designed to be subtle enough to avoid detection but significant enough to mislead the AI. For example, slight alterations to an image could make an AI based recognition system to misclassify it. Protection against AI involves in securing the data used to train models and algorithms themselves. This includes maintaining strict security protocols, logging all operation performed by AI into an audit trail, and using encryption and access controls to safeguard data and model weights. It is also important to continuously monitor for potential threats and vulnerabilities. Supply chain attack. A supply chain attack occurs when an attacker infiltrates a system through an outside provider or partner that has access to your systems and data. The attacker might exploit the third party's defenses or insert a loophole into a product offered by a vendor. Common sources of supply chain attacks include commercial softwares, open source supply chains, or foreign products. Attackers may compromise a software company systems or the integrity of their product, affecting all users of that software. To defend against supply chain attacks, it is essential to vet all new and existing suppliers for security purposes, monitor for covert activities, and implement strict security protocols for software development and deployment. Also, make sure that the supplier and the products can be trusted. Now, let's discuss about cloud based versus on premises architectures. First of all, on the basis of ownership and data security. For a cloud based architecture, the service provider owns the infrastructure and the customer typically has less control over the hardware. Security of data is the joint responsibility of both the organization and the cloud provider. For an on premises architecture, the organization owns the infrastructure and maintains full control over the hardware and data, which can be crucial for compliance and security. Security of data is solely the responsibility of the organization. Costs. For a cloud based architecture, generally, cloud services have a lower upfront cost since it is centralized and operates on a subscription or a pay as you go model. For on premises architecture, it involves higher upfront capital expenditure for hardware and infrastructure and additional expenses on experienced personnel. In terms of complexity, for a cloud based architecture, they can be less complex to manage due to the handling of the service provider, and however the shared responsibility model can introduce complexity in security management. For an on-premises architecture, it is more complex as it requires in-house expertise to manage and secure the infrastructure. Security changes may also take more time due to the need for physical hardware or software updates. Cryptographic attacks. These attacks are methods used to undermine the security of a cryptographic system, often by exploiting weaknesses in the encryption algorithm, protocols, or key management. It includes two main attacks. Hash collisions. A hash collision occurs when two different inputs produce the same output hash value. Hash functions are designed to be collision resistant, meaning it should be highly unlikely for two different inputs to have the same hash value. However, attackers can sometimes find or create collisions, which can compromise the data integrity and security. Historical hash functions like MD5 and SHA-1 have been found to be vulnerable to hash collisions, where researchers were able to produce two different inputs with the same hash output. Downgrade attack. A downgrade attack, also known as a version rollback attack, forces a system to abandon a high quality mode of operation in favor of an older, less secure mode. This type of attack often targets communication protocols, making them revert to older versions with known vulnerabilities. It is typically executed as a part of a man in the middle or MITM attack. By downgrading the protocol, attackers can exploit weaker security and potentially decrypt or manipulate the communication. To protect against these and other cryptographic attacks, it's essential to use up to date and robust cryptographic algorithms, maintain proper key management practices, and implement security measures like perfect forward secrecy and HTTPS strict transport security HSTS where applicable. Privileged escalation. Privileged escalation in cybersecurity is a critical vulnerability that attackers exploit to gain higher levels of access or privileges within a system or network than originally intended. It's when a threat actor gains elevated access and administrative rights to a system by exploiting security vulnerabilities. Attackers may use misconfigurations, malwares, social engineering, or stolen credentials to escalate their privileges. There are two main types: vertical and horizontal. Vertical privileges escalation involves gaining higher level privileges like root or admin access. Horizontal privilege escalation involves expanding control across accounts with similar levels of access. Successful attacks can lead to unauthorized access to system resources, installation of a malware, data breaches, and potentially a complete system takeover. To defend against privilege escalation attacks, organizations should regularly update systems, enforce the principle of least privilege, that is, minimum access that a person needs to do their job, monitor for suspicious activity, use data execution prevention, implement address space layout randomization, and educate users about social engineering threats. Cross site scripting, or XSS, not to be confused with CSS, is a common and potent security vulnerability in web applications. It's a code injection attack where an attacker inserts malicious scripts into content from otherwise trusted websites. The malicious script executes within the user's browser, appearing as a part of legitimate site, which can lead to sensitive information theft or user impersonation. Now let's discuss the types of cross-site scripting. Reflected or non-persistent cross-site scripting. This occurs when a malicious script is reflected off a web server, such as in an error message or a search result. The script is sent via the URL or the other HTTP request data and is executed in the victim's browser when the vulnerability page is viewed. Stored or persistent cross-site scripting. In this case, the malicious script is stored on the target server, such as in a database, message forum, or comment field. When other users access the stored data, the script executes in their browsers. DOM-based cross-site scripting. This type of XSS attack happens when the vulnerability exists in the client-side code rather than the server-side code. The attacker manipulates the DOM environment in the victim's browser, causing client-side code to run differently than intended. To prevent cross-site scripting attacks, the following methods are used. Input validation. Ensure that all user input is validated to restrict the types of data that can be entered. Disable JavaScript. Since almost all websites use JavaScript, disabling it is hard. There are extensions that can control it. Use security headers. Implement HTTP security headers like Content Security Protocol to reduce the risk of XSS by specifying which dynamic resources are allowed to load. Update and patch. Keep all frameworks, libraries, and plugins up to date to protect against known vulnerabilities. Code injection. Code injection is a broad term for attacks where an attacker is able to execute malicious code as a part of the input to a computer program. This can compromise the security of the entire application. Some of the common types are SQL injection. Attackers exploit vulnerabilities in data-driven applications to send malicious SQL queries through the application to the database. It can lead to unauthorized viewing of data, data manipulation, and even full database compromise. XML injection. This involves injecting malicious XML content onto a poorly configured XML parser. It can result in unauthorized access to data, bypassing of security mechanisms, or execution of unwanted logic in XML applications. LDAP injection. Similar to SQL injection, but targets applications that use LDAP services. Attackers manipulate LDAP statements to execute arbitrary commands or modify LDAP tree data. DLL injections. These involve injecting a dynamic link library or a DLL into a running process. Once injected, the DLL code can be executed within the address space of another process, leading to privilege escalation or unauthorized actions. Buffer overflow. A buffer overflow is a cybersecurity vulnerability that occurs when a program writes more data to its buffer than it is designed to hold. It happens due to programming errors, often in languages such as C or C++, that don't automatically manage buffer sizes. The extra data can overflow adjacent memory, leading to crashes or unauthorized code execution. Attackers can use buffer overflows to corrupt the execution stack, execute arbitrary code, or take control of a system. To prevent buffer overflows, developers should use secure coding practices such as bound checking and languages that can handle memory management automatically. Replay attacks. A replay attack is a type of cybersecurity threat where an attacker intercepts valid transmitted data and fraudulently retransmits it, possibly to gain unauthorized access or mislead the recipients into performing unintended actions. The attacker eavesdrops on a secure communication, captures it, and then resends it to the original receiver or another target. Since the message is authentic and correctly encrypted, it can appear legitimate to the user. Some popular types of replay attacks are as follows. Pass the hash. This is a technique where attackers use stolen hash credentials to authenticate on the network without needing the plaintext passwords. Cookies. Cookies are small data files stored by websites to track user activity. While generally safe, they can be exploited by attackers to track users and steal information. Session hijacking or sijacking. This involves stealing a user's session token to gain unauthorized access to their account. Attackers might use methods like sniffing network traffic or cross site scripting. Session ID attack. Similar to sijacking, this attack focuses on stealing or manipulating session IDs to impersonate a user. For protection against such attacks, it is recommended to use end-to-end encryption to ensure that the data is encrypted on the sender side and only decrypted by the intended recipient. This prevents attackers from deciphering intercepted data during transmission. Include timestamps in messages to limit the validity period, reducing the window for attackers to reuse the data. Utilize nonces, which are number used once to ensure each transaction is unique and cannot be replayed. Establish random session keys for each transaction that cannot be reused. Secure cookies. Mark cookies as secure and HTTP only to prevent them from being accessed by client-side scripts. Use HTTPS to encrypt session traffic, making it difficult for attackers to intercept session IDs. Header manipulation. Header manipulation refers to the exploitation of HTTP headers by attackers to conduct various types of attacks. These are part of the HTTP request and response messages and contain information about the resource being fetched by or the client requesting the resource. Attackers may manipulate headers to perform actions like bypassing security protocols, conducting host header injection attacks, or exploiting vulnerabilities like XSS and cross-site request forgery. To prevent header manipulation attacks, it is important to validate and standardize all header data, implement security headers like CSP, and use web application firewalls to monitor and block suspicious activities.